Have you ever wondered how the gospel invites the church to embody the sacred or maybe the secular, and how the church is called to live out faith? Well, then this video is for you. You definitely want to stick around to the end to see how we wrap this up and how we expose the scriptures to invite us as the church to be the faithful people of God. In this section, in this fourth video into the book of Acts, we see how Luke opens us up in chapters roughly 15 through 19, and he exposes these two almost cultural ideas at one time. He brings in the notion of the Jewish council in Jerusalem. It's kind of a difficult idea to wrap your head around, but Luke hints at it, that there was this kind of authoritative voice that still existed in Jerusalem. Jewish Christians, so to speak, that seemed to have a pretty authoritative say on the way the church was run. We even encounter Paul making reference to this exact same council in the book of Galatians, and their influence on how they felt Christians needed to behave. More specifically, they had this voice and they were calling all Christians to somewhat become Jewish, to follow some of the basic Jewish principles of being the people of God and engaging in the covenant of God, that then they might be Christians. Paul and both Luke write and show us how this council had pretty a long-reaching effect on Christians. And we see this today, right? How does the church maybe demand Christians behave in a certain way before they come to faith? Maybe prerequisites, so to speak, on how we invite people in and demand even that they might act and behave before they even embody faith. Both Luke and both Paul have a certain kind of speaking against this council a little bit. But then Luke makes a very dynamic change. Pretty soon we see the character again of Paul arise, the key figure in the book of Acts. And from that point, this council is no longer mentioned. It's left to the side, so to speak. But instead, these young churches are popping up all over the place, these little home churches. And now, instead of the way that Jews taught, in the way that they were to engage in culture, they were to somewhat like stay away from, follow purity law, gather themselves around and be afraid of the outside world, this new church is being called to live out their faith in community, in the world, in their cultures. So the new question arising that the church must face is, how might faith impact their community? How might faith impact the way these Christians had to tackle Greek culture of that day? And there's a lot at play right there. And so Luke in this section is really holding the tension between the sacred, right? That which is holy and of God, and the secular out into the world. And now we as the church wrestle today. How do we embrace both of those things? How do we hold to our traditions? How do we hold to our faith and what has gone before us? And how do we go out and live into the world, not afraid of what we might encounter because we have this resurrected God going before us? So Luke is inviting us to maybe let go a little bit of the prerequisites, the things we might demand of persons as they come into faith, and instead lean out into our culture and see how we as a church might go out and be a presence in the world, and in that way build relationships and invite people into relationship with our God, a saving and redeeming relationship, much like the one that Paul has put on display, where he first was Saul, the Jew, the one persecuting the Christians, has an encounter with God and turns to become one of the greatest Christians and missionaries of all time, and is now out into the world growing churches. It's a beautiful way that the church might embody the storyline of Paul. Amen.